I finally watched Hellboy the Crooked Man today, literally probably about an hour ago. Just finished it. And I want to go over some of it, okay? I really need to go over some of it. We'll start from the bat with the opening. I have mixed opinions about the opening. It feels very much like a short film. I don't know if they made a short film and used that. This is pretty common. They used a short film to sort of get the budget together, if you get what I mean. Like, oh, here's what we can do. They're on a train. A bunch of them are on a train. You've got Hellboy, you've got the research woman, and you've got like a FBI, I guess, agent in there. They're all together on the train. The spider is some sort of cursed spider, which breaks out. I think this is one of these things where they want to make sure that you know what we're gonna be getting in this is blood and gore and that kind of stuff, and they do that a little bit. They immediately come straight out with the fact that the cop, the FBI guy, who I can't remember the name of, his head get bitten off by the spider. The guy who plays, and this is I have no gripes with the guy who plays him. To begin with, he's very much like a skinny guy pretending to be muscly. No offense, when you've had Ron Perlman and when you've had David Harbour, both amazing actors, he just doesn't stack up. It sort of feels like he's also trying to do like an impression, especially in the opening bit.
Joe, you hear that?
Feels like he's trying to do an impression of Ron Perlman all the way through with his voice and stuff like that. They crash down in a hick town, that's the best way of describing it. Some kid, again, I don't know if this is part of the movie. A lot of the movie at the beginning feels like a setup, which obviously it is. It's the setup for the movie, but a lot of it feels like the setup as a short film would be to prove the context, if you get what I mean. They go to this house in the woods where the train has crashed to get the spider. Somebody's really sick. They meet another guy and he knows the like local witch, and that's who they're going to talk to try and cure the kid. In fact, I don't even think we find out if the kid's cured at the end of the film, but we'll get to that near the end. No, we definitely don't. But the little kid sick, so they find Hellboy and the researcher woman find a wizard knowing man. He knows the witch, and they go speak to the witch. Or at least to try to. They get into the house. They find Cara. Cara is the witch. Just her skin all flayed. And to be honest, this is where it does get really like cool looking. And it definitely feels like this is where the film starts for me. The quality jumps up massively, and the cinematography jumps up. Everything jumps up a little bit at this point. They find like a skin suit on the bed, and Cara, we presume dead, or at least I presumed dead, because I don't know witch rules. I'm not a witchman. But they go downstairs. We get this long story of how Tom, the guy who at least knows the witches, I wouldn't call him a witch hunter, but he knows the witches at least. He tells the story of the Crooked Man, of how he meets a young witch. We find out just not that. He meets a witch who teaches him the ways of the witch. That's what he's going to learn. So he finds a dead cat, he gets the bones off it, he does this other stuff. He does this spell, and then the Crooked Man shows up, and he decides that he's never going to use the bone. The bone is like a lucky bone, he calls it. He tries to get rid of it, it keeps popping up. One of these things where, it keeps popping up when he doesn't need it. But he knows a lot about the Crooked Man. During that time, we do get a really cool scene, although we do get a really bad CGI raccoon. So there's like a bit where Cara comes in, well, a raccoon comes in, and gets into the Cara skin, and that is Cara. Cara's a witch now. She sold her soul to the devil. She's like the witch knowledge person now. She knows more about witches than Tom does. There's like a big discussion with Cara, and then the big bad witch shows up, which this has some amazing scenes. I think before this though, we get a little bit back lore about Hellboy as well. We get some Hellboy lore. His mother's a witch. Everybody's a witch in this movie, okay? Everybody's a goddamn witch. Everybody's a witch, okay? This is the bit where I'm like, I actually got a jump scare, but it's of a door. There's a door jump scare where the door just slams open. Absolutely dropped one. I absolutely filled my trousers during that. So if anything, at least we've got one jump scare out of it. It is one of them stupid, like, it's not a real jump scare, but that's when the big witch shows up. And the big witch is great. I love the big witch. She's not a big witch, she's not physically large. She's the big bad of the thing, other than the Crooked Man. But the main witch, the one that taught Tom how to do the witch thing with the bone, she's like the other antagonist. Great. They do a lot of wire work with her, and she's amazing at it. It seems very natural, her wire work. I can only presume she does some sort of like, maybe she's a circus display actor. I could probably Google her. I'm not going to. But she rode in on a horse, and then we find out the horse is the guy's dad. Tom's dad is a horse. Which is so weird. It's such a weird concept, but it's so kind of chilling at the same time. Which again, it's one of these things where the concept and how they do it actually is really good. It's just the rest of the packaging of the movie doesn't hold up that well. There's this whole backstory about the witch again, and then we get a little bit of action finally. Hellboy, we're 30 minutes in this movie. Of a 90-minute movie, we're 30 minutes in, and Hellboy finally gets his action. Which is he smacks a bug. He kills a bug with his giant brick hand. It's really not that impressive when you see it. They're going through the woods, trying to find the big bad witch. I can't remember the big bad witch's name, sorry. As I always say this, I'm not very good at names. So they're trying to find the big bad witch. Can't remember the big bad witch's name for love nor money, but it does make a difference. She then, Cara, the witch that we've just found, the raccoon witch, gets like snaked, and that's the only way I can describe it. A snake is coming out of a hoo-ha, and then in her mouth, and then it comes back out of a hoo-ha, and then back in her mouth, and then out of a hoo-ha, and then Hellboy fights the snake. We get another fight scene. The big difference is it's actually a really good fight scene, except they really use a very bad CG snake, and they also do that thing where you're like, oh, it's over, oh, it's not over, oh, it's over, oh, it's not over. They do it too often. He passes out. Cara's missing, and Hellboy passes out, where he gets shown by Cara the church that he was born in. We find out Hellboy was born in a church, and his mother is there, which because the only thing I've seen, I read some of the graphic novels, and I've only seen the first two Hellboy movies. I always thought they just sort of opened a hole, and that's like he's one of the little imp demons that crawled through before the big demons crawled through, and that's sort of what happened. But no, apparently he was just birthed. I don't know enough though. But they go through the whole other thing. There's a giant crow that sets the mam on fire. All this stuff. Really impressive effects when they're solid effects. When they're like real, the CG in it again is just going to be one of the things where that biggest gripe I have with this movie is its overuse and it's unpolished CG. Why can't we go back to giant toy like things again? You know what I mean? Cara is missing. There's some really good scenes with Cara. Like they're trying to hunt down Cara and they think they see her, but it's just under dirt, and he keeps just digging further and further down. He can't find her, and it's actually a really good scene. It's very harrowing. It's hard to explain what it is, but it's a really good scene. But they get out of the other side of the forest and they meet a priest, vicar, priest. I don't know which one he is. I'm going to say priest, some sort of priest, some sort of clergy, I guess. He is blind and quite old, and he's meant to be looking after this old church. And they sort of use him to explain the plot again, just in case you weren't watching the 44 minutes previous to this movie. They're explaining the plot again to the guy. This is the third or fourth person they've explained the plot to. But he sort of just humps it. He's just like, yeah, that's normal here. Witches are everywhere, apparently. Which is true, because what happens next is all of a sudden the church is surrounded by witches. It goes to night, and then the church is suddenly surrounded by witches. Which is good. Scene-wise, it looks really cool, except for they're only on one side of the fence. They could have just went out the back door. It looks like they're only on one side. But it's sort of like Witch Florida, because the guy says, all the witches come here.
A lot of witches around these parts.
So it's Witch Florida. The witch guy, Tom, he's coaxed out really easily by the witch woman, the main leader of the witches. She seems to be like in charge. So they insinuate that she's really old. She's meant to be like 400 years old, but she hasn't aged. They reference it when she's riding Horstad. And then there's all these old witches, which I can only presume weren't always old witches. Maybe she's like sucked life out of them or something. I don't know. But that's my presumption. Is my presumption right? I don't know. What do you think I am? Some sort of presumption man? Now that Tom's outside, this is where the Crooked Man can show up and talk Tom into giving. He wants the bone, the animal bone that he had, the lucky animal bone that he had at the beginning. He wants that, and I think that's his soul. I think it's going to be like this is like the final swap for his soul, so he could become a witch. As that's about to happen, Hellboy shows up and absolutely does some smackdown goddamn wrestling moves, which are really good. Again, there's nice little cool sections, but all of it, the rest of it really isn't very well packaged. The real things that I can pull out of it, the real things I can pull out of it that I really enjoyed, or when Hellboy's fighting, which I feel like in the original one, Hellboy sort of fought a lot more, but he also was like part of stuff. Hellboy in this just seems to be in the background a lot of the time. And then the other bits, or the witch, when the witch is like flying around in the air, as I say, I don't know if she was like part of Cirque du Soleil or something of that nature, but the way she uses the wires in the movie is just, it really holds her character up as like a shining glory to everybody else's character. When Hellboy meets the Crooked Man, you think, oh shit, he's gonna like absolutely do a major smackdown. He doesn't. It takes about a couple of seconds, and then all of a sudden Crooked Man is getting the witches to pull off railings, of the metal railings from the church, and then the Crooked Man just picks them, not physically picks them up, but picks them up with like Jedi mind powers, and then throws one at a time. Why he doesn't throw them all at once at Hellboy, no idea, but he throws them one at a time at Hellboy. Relatively unfazed Hellboy. He sort of goes back in the church, pulls them out, pulls them all out. Don't mind it. Really quite liked it. It felt a bit slow. It sort of felt like he would throw one and then have a little conversation, and then throw another one, and Hellboy sort of went and then he like slowly turned around, almost like he was doing it on purpose, and got one on the back as well. It felt very like, I'm gonna kind of compare it to wrestling. Is it felt how when people find out wrestling fake is what they expect wrestling to be? Does that make sense? I think I lost myself in the train of thought. Then once Hellboy's in, Crooked Man's like, well, that's not going to work. It doesn't work with Tom. It didn't work with Hellboy. He hasn't really tried the scientist woman, but I can go for the priest. It's time to talk to the priest. The priest is old and blind. So what does he do? He gives them the option to be young again. Now, I don't know if these are two different actors, or the makeup is really good in comparison. Maybe it's because I've been looking at the Crooked Man's rubber face all this time. But the old man going from old, I just presumed that was an old man. But when he goes from old to young, I'm like, oh no, that is the same actor. It might not be. They might have just cast two actors that looks maybe a father son. But he takes his sight away. He does all them bits and bobs to try and convince him to be a bad guy. And it doesn't work, obviously, because he does all the priest stuff. Which the priest actor, as well as the witch actor, really, really hold this movie together. They really hold this movie together, because without them, the wooden Hellboy actor, no offense, I'm sure that was a choice to make, but the preacher really leans into being like an Americanized preacher. My favorite line, one of them at least, there's a couple of my favorite lines, but this is my favorite one. One of my favorite things that happens in this movie is one of the witches, who obviously lived in this town, points at a person's name, a buried name, and says, oh, she was like an adulterer or something of that nature.
Abby Riley done poisoned two husbands. How'd she get planted in a churchyard?
That gives the Crooked Man an idea. He is going to raise anybody who's done sin in the graveyard. Apparently that's all of them. Everybody in that grave has done some sin. So all these people start popping up, which gets us two amazing things out of this. First of all, they throw one casket and an absolute hottie gets out of it, who I thought looked like Charlie XCX a little bit. Don't know why. No offense, Charlie XCX. I don't know if you won't be watching this, but just in case, no offense, I don't know why it is. And also Hellboy has an amazing line, which I'll get to in a second. But Hellboy absolutely choke slams this grunge looking woman.
Kiss this.
Now, for some reason, she's the only one that when they buried her, they de-aged her back to like a living person. Everybody else is just a rotting corpse fighting for their not life. The priest says when they get buried, their sins are forgiven. And then Hellboy absolutely pops out with this one-liner.
Given don't mean forgotten.
And I think that really is one of the best. There is a couple of one-liners in this. That's my favourite one-liner so far. There's a cheesiness to it, and there's a definite I want to be Ron Perlman aspect to it, in the least offensive way ever, because Ron Perlman is the GOAT, and it's going to be hard to ever not think of Hellboy as Ron Perlman. They're fighting the zombies. They're starting to like overtake them. Hellboy is meant to be able to like kick the crap out of any major beast or like monster, but for some reason you can get like overrun by a bunch of zombies. I don't know whether this meant to be like a year one. Is absolutely getting smacked when the priest and Tom work together, and a spade that is holy because it dug up all the graves for the dead people, which always has made me think of Dogma when they're talking about the blessing the golf club. He uses the magic bone to draw a cross on the spade, and that's a magic holy spade now, and that takes out all of the zombies in one go. But the way that the priest does this scene is absolutely amazing. It really just tops it off. He kills everyone with the magic spade. That's important. This is where they decide to Scooby-Doo it up more, is they split up. We have priest and researcher staying at the church, and we have Tom and Hellboy heading out further to the Crooked Man's house, which is like the opus magnum, the place that they were meant to be going from the beginning of the movie. For some reason, the guy, Tom, takes his shoes off. Don't know why. Nobody explains it. He just takes his shoes off. There's nothing wrong with them. They show a scene of his boots, like a shot of his boots. They look perfectly fine. This is where the researcher decides that she's going to use the mines that are built all over the town to try and weaken the Crooked Man. She thinks the Crooked Man is using the mines as like a way of moving his evil energy around. Which again, it feels like they wrote Scooby-Doo and then crammed Hellboy in, which is the problem I have with this film in general at the moment, is the fact that Hellboy just sort of seems to be in the background. When Hellboy and Tom get to the house, there's some cool stuff that does happen in there. There's some good scenes where Hellboy is like walking around and Tom's following him around, and they do a double jump scare, two very basic like repetitive jump scares, but are put together quite well in this part, where he lifts like a dish cover, and underneath is maggoty food. Gross. But then he turns around to talk to Tom about it, and Tom's neck just breaks in the same way that Crooked Man's is. And the shock of it, even though I was like, oh, there's a jump scare. The second jump scare, I don't know whether it's because the first jump scare was just one, or they doubled up and the jump scare pushed us over the edge. I don't know, but the jump scare got us, and I never get jump scared. The church has a hole, like under the pew, has a hole to the coal mines. Now, every film fan will be asking, why have they done that? Why would you do that?
Why they built a church on top of a very convenient access.
But the weird thing in this movie is they explain it. They say the reason that they put a church on top of a coal mine that they know is a bit evil is in the hopes that like it worked like a stopper. By a church being so good and that hole being so evil, it'll like stop the evil from coming through as fast. Which I was like shocked by. I wasn't like prepared for them to be like, oh, we're doing this and this is why. Just wasn't ready for that. As Hellboy's now walking by himself, he finds a room that he thinks Tom's in, and it turns out it's not. It's his, like, some sort of a door to the dreamscape that he was in earlier, where he decides that he's going to try and like save his mother. And they do have a very touching moment, but the rubber suit sort of ruins it a little bit. I can't get over the suit. It just doesn't look right. But they have a little touching moment. Oh, and then he realizes it's all a dream. It's meant to be like a trap, like a booby trap. I think he says it's the booby trap. The researcher, now that she's under the caves, finds the giant spider from the beginning of the movie. I just thought they had forgot about the giant spider from the beginning of the movie. But they find the giant spider from the beginning of the movie. The researcher knows magic, which is bad, because that means she's at one point had to sell her soul. Because that was the trait. That's what the other witch said, Cara said, is to be a witch, you have to sell your soul. So she uses magic powers, now she's soulless. At this point, there is 10 minutes left of this goddamn movie. With credits, there's like 10 minutes left, then credits. How are they going to pull this out of the bag? I have no idea. But the Crooked Man is barely been in it so far, which is another big gripe I have. Hellboy, barely in it. Crooked Man, barely in it. But this is where Hellboy and Tom meet back up and then just kick the living daylights out of him. He gets a hairball flicked into the back of his throat. Not Hellboy. Crooked Man gets a witch ball, which is what they've been talking about through the entire film. That's what made the kid at the beginning sick. They flick a witch ball into the man's mouth, into the Crooked Man's mouth, and then it's pretty easy to beat the crap out of him after that. His head explodes, it's full of coins. It's like Scott Pilgrim versus the world all of a sudden. One of them, they're all meant to be, each coin is meant to be soul, and so Tom takes what he thinks is his soul back. It's just a coin. They all look the same. It would be good if he had like, maybe he was French or something, and then he found like a franc in there, because it's 1959, they still have francs, or something of that nature, but they don't. They're all the same coin, except for one's really shiny, and that's his coin apparently. I liked what they were trying to do. The premise of it, the concept of it is really good, and doing a Hellboy horror is such a good idea. It just felt they wanted to be, it felt like they wanted to be the original Hellboy movie, the first one with Ron Perlman, and they also wanted to shy away from it. So they were in this sort of dichotomy where they wanted to have more. The actor of Hellboy, or maybe the director, wanted the actor who plays Hellboy to be more Ron Perlman-esque, where maybe he didn't want to be, and they ended up just pushing him in the background a lot of the time. The budget, I'm gonna find out what the budget is now. It had a $20 million budget, and I can imagine a lot of that goes to the effects, and everything else. It's the cheapest Hellboy, but it certainly feels like it is as well. I would like Hellboy to maybe given to somebody like Blumhouse and see what they could do with it, but so far recently Blumhouse has sort of let me down in that area as well. If you watch my Imaginary review, you'll know that they've absolutely let us down. But nevertheless, I think it was on the right lines, but there was patches of really cool stuff that just didn't seem to be sewn together very well. Also, they didn't have that scary Clockwork Man from the first one. He scares the bejeebers out of me. I hope you like that. I really enjoyed Hellboy, and I probably will watch it again with some friends, but I definitely won't be watching it again for fun. Don't forget, if you like my stuff, I'm on Twitch Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. GMT, BST, whatever time you're watching this. 8 p.m. in the UK. Also, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. We're trying to get to the 1,000, right? That's always the big thing.